Democrats are getting, quote, destroyed in their midterm political messaging. That's not according to Republicans. That's the assessment of California's Governor Aquanet, Gavin Newsom, who also claims he's totally not running for president in 2024. As you may know, Newsom's been offering quite a lot of unsolicited advice to his party ahead of next week's midterm elections. And in a recent interview over at CBS News, he actually seemed pretty angry about the direction things are going.
It goes to my fundamental grievance with my damn party. We're getting crushed on narrative. We're going to have to do better in terms of getting on the offense and stop being on the damn defense.
Some dams. He's very angry. So with Democrats on the verge of suffering losses in the midterm elections, is Newsom trying to set himself up as the one man who can save his party, and for that matter, the nation? And is there any chance voters would be open to that message? Joining me now is host of the Daily California podcast and The Next Revolution, Sunday nights on Fox News Channel. It's Steve Hilton. Steve, good to see you. So Newsom seems to believe that this is a messaging and narrative problem for the Democrats. Is it?
It's absolutely hilarious watching the Democrats engage in all these pre-mortems. You know, they haven't even lost yet. They're blaming each other. There's another similar story in the front page of the New York Times today. They're all sort of complaining about the messaging,
right,
whereas in fact there isn't any messaging that can persuade voters to ignore the reality, which is the consequence of the far-left policy agenda that they've been pushing for the last 2 years, both at the federal level and in California. And there's a real irony, by the way, about Newsom blaming the National Party for the losses that are to come, because there was another story I just noticed, which is campaign aides working for House Democrats are now looking at the losses that they're likely to suffer in California for congressional districts that have been moved from solid Dem to toss-ups and looking like they may lose a further 4 or 5 seats even in California. Guess who they're blaming for that? Gavin Newsom, because he's been focused on all this national intervention instead of campaigning in California.
That's like a big firing squad, circular firing squad, just no guns allowed, of course, in the Democratic firing squad. The other thing that sort of amuses me about this line of thinking and the thesis from Newsom is that really it's just so frustrating that the Democratic Party, they can't push a narrative, right? They're having trouble with messaging. They control almost all of the news media, big tech. I mean, they have a bullhorn bigger than anyone else's, and yet he's sort of pretending like, oh, it's just, you know, the Republicans and their message machine got us again.
Yes, exactly. And by the way, it's not that they haven't had a message. It's just that the message that they've been pushing very consistently for the last few months has been one that has been totally rejected by the voters. Their message, and by the way, who's been in the lead in pushing this message, was mainly about abortion. Abortion, insurrection, abortion, insurrection. Gavin Newsom was one of the loudest advocates of that. He was the one that tried to amp up the abortion issue by taking out ads in other states and promoting abortion in California. But the voters don't want to listen to that, because what they're really experiencing, as I said, is the consequences for them, for their lives, of these failed policies. And so the messaging hasn't been absent, it's just been wrong.
Governor Newsom was recently asked if he plans on running for president in 2024, and he didn't completely explicitly rule it out, but he was very slippery and left the impression that he's not going to do it. Do you believe him?
No, it's entirely, all his behavior this year has been geared towards one thing, which is running for president. And all these interventions, whether that's over abortion or picking fights endlessly with Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott and criticizing the Democrats for not fighting hard enough, it's all designed with one thing in mind, which is to say to the Democrat activists who vote in any primary election, here I am, I'm the one that's really the kind of aggressive champion for the base and for the activists. But in terms of his likelihood of ever succeeding, I would direct people to a marvelous piece by someone called Josh Barrow. And the title of this piece, people should read it because it's well worth the read, is Gavin Newsom is gross and embarrassing and will never be president. The interesting thing about Josh Barrow is that he's a Democrat pundit. Barro. Well worth the read.
Very quickly, Steve, just want to get your reaction. We talked about it in the last block. Hillary Clinton giving an interview a few days ago saying, oh, the voters just, they don't understand what's really happening. That's part of the problem here. Quickly, Steve.
It's just so unbelievable. She's learned absolutely nothing. Each time she comes out with these these remarks. They say, look, the real problem is the voters. It's not me, it's not my policies, it's not my party, it's you, the voters. It's like the people who put on a play that's rejected by the audience, say, we need a new audience, rather than think about the defects of the play.
It's you
Absolutely
idiots.
Embarrassing.
You idiots and your terrible taste.
Exactly.
Why don't you appreciate us and all of our genius? All right, Steve Hilton, we always appreciate it. Thank you, Steve.